an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 3, Episode 5. I Never Want to See Josh Again. In this episode, Rebecca is staying with her mother, who becomes mysteriously supportive, trying to feed her and give her TLC. And I think that this is just her trying to be a better mom. But in fact, she's just trying to drug her. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode, and to Julia, I believe it was Julia, let me just double check. Yes, for commissioning the live watch of this episode, which was earlier this week. So this episode's pretty heavy. It's probably, of all of the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend episodes that we have seen in this entire bit of coverage, the one that has, it's the saddest ending. It's the only one that doesn't try and end on a comedic note. It truly is just letting itself be a low point, which I respect. I went into this episode not really knowing what to expect, because I just wasn't sure whether Rebecca would truly try to leave West Covina. The idea of her attempting suicide, which is what happens at the very end of this episode, didn't even occur to me. And it just really should have. It should have occurred to me. This isn't, as her mother says, this isn't the first time she's tried to do this. We know that she struggles with this. She struggles with depression. She struggles with feelings of self-harm anyway. And there is nothing like this kind of moment in your life to make you feel like there isn't anything to look forward to. There's nothing better coming. And Rebecca really thinks that nobody cares about her. The irony of this episode is seeing her sitting there thinking over and over about the terrible things that she said to her friends, and the guilt that she feels over that, how much she seems to believe that the way she behaved was truly unforgivable. And then when we go and hang out with her friends, not a single solitary one of them is upset with her. There isn't even a single one that's like, I can't believe she said that to me. Everybody is just like, where is she? I hope she's okay. I really miss her. Where is she? What is she doing? I just miss her. And she has no idea, because she is unwilling to get in contact with them, because she thinks they would never want to hear from her. And this is something that I think a lot of people misunderstand about suicide attempts. I don't want to say this across the board, because of course everybody has their own reasons for things. But I think a lot of people believe that committing suicide is somebody saying that they truly don't have anything left to live for. And sometimes that's certainly true. And that's like the main drive behind why they do this. But a lot of people that I know have considered it because they truly feel they don't bring anything good to the world. They don't think that their life is helpful, or that they believe that people would be better off if they weren't here. And a lot of times this sort of moment, the guilt from that is a major factor in feeling everybody's lives would be better if I weren't in them. Just look at what I said to them. Just look at how unforgivably I acted. It would be best if I weren't even alive, because I do so much harm and fuck up so bad and am so incompetent at living my life that it would just make everything easier if I weren't even here. And I think that's something that gets lost a lot of times when people are trying to understand suicide attempts. They just don't. That perspective is something that a lot of people don't hear or think about. And that's why when people try and say, like, well, what will your children do if you're gone? Or what about your girlfriend or your parents? People who are considering suicide truly believe they'll be hurt at first, but things will be better for them eventually. It will all be better for them if I'm not there. So trying to appeal to other people in their lives who are going to miss them doesn't necessarily work, because that they think they're doing it for those people, that it's on their behalf, that they're improving things for them. And it's just it's so impossible when a person is in that kind of headspace to know what to say, because most of us are not trained therapists. Most of us don't have the insight into exactly the mind frame that somebody is in. And I have lost a couple of friends over the past 5 years to suicide. One of them was a listener, Mary Richter, who a lot of you probably interacted with if you were a patron over 4 years ago. And Mary Richter came to the Mary came to the meetup in Orlando, and she was just a blast. I loved her right away. And her and Rashawn were like this instantly. And she wasn't like somebody that I talked to every day. And you know how Facebook is. They don't show you everybody's posts all the time because they don't show things in order. They don't show things chronologically. So people will be posting and you might never even see it. So when I didn't see her for a bit, I didn't think anything of it, because there's plenty of people that I'm friends with on Facebook that I didn't see. And then Rashawn texted me that she had wondered where Mary was and went to her Facebook and saw all these messages. And found out that Mary had died about a week earlier. And people say all the time that you just never know what somebody's going through by how they behave. And you really don't, because Mary was one of those bright people that makes you smile immediately. And she felt like a sunny person. She was just, one of those that brings light with her. And to realize that she was struggling with that and she lost. It's a really humbling thing to know that you're just never privy to what's going on inside a person's head. And I often think about her. And I wish that there had been, I know with this kind of thing, there's not a lot to be done. This is an illness. This is something that is going on with a person inside their body. Their own body chemistry is fighting them. But sometimes I just wonder, I'm sure that a lot of people who have experience with this also wonder if there was anything they could have said. sorry. Just a heavy topic. And, I live in fear of losing some of my other friends who also struggle with this. And I just don't know what I would do. I really don't. And I've also struggled with this. Contemplating self-harm. There's been a lot of times in my life. And I mean, there's just that feeling of maybe the world would be better, you know, is one that I really understand. And the feeling of just, people keep saying it has to get better eventually, and it just doesn't. And when do you just decide, I'm tired? That's another one, is the feeling of just, I'm so tired of just trying to make it to the end of the day, every day, over and over again. And people just get worn out. So this episode is really, it's a rough one because it's trying, and I'm not sure how successfully, to foil the heaviness of what's going on with Rebecca with the antics back at the office. And it's sort of an odd thing, because what the show decided to do was have there be a woman who comes in to fill in for Rebecca, because Rebecca winds up tendering her resignation. She doesn't. Her mother does it on her behalf. And everybody in the office who had been either close with Rebecca or wanted to be close becomes sort of obsessed with the person filling in for her. And her name is Cornelia. And they all put their baggage on her as a person. And it's one of those that I'm like, part of me thought that it was like an interesting idea. It's so incredibly cringy to watch that I had a lot of, like, anytime that you have a like heavy cringe humor episode, it can be hard for me. This is part of what I'm running into. I'm watching Schitt's Creek right now with Owen, and a lot of that show is cringe humor, and it can be really tough for me to like get through it. And Cornelia has to deal with people being so incredibly awkward. And what we've got is Maya, who is the millennial, what does she say? I'm hoping that she's like a modern thigh-high feminist. I don't even know what that means. Maybe it's supposed to be like sex positive or something. We have Daryl, who's struggling with his relationship and trying to find somebody to bounce ideas off of because he wants somebody to talk to about it. We've got Nathaniel, who is trying to soldier on as if nothing is bothering him, even though he is apparently very affected by this loss. And then we've got, what is the name of the dude who's the black guy who's like, oh, you know, me and Rebecca had that will they or won't they thing. I can't remember his name because we don't really ever see him until this episode. Tim, thank you, Megan. And he was the one that I found. Oh, Erica corrected and Megan said, no, wait, I think he's Jim. Okay, Jim. Yeah. Tim is the white guy, Jim is the black. Okay, that's pretty funny. That's actually a pretty good joke. I actually really like the idea of this dude because there is always this is just such a thing with men. You can't be like civil and then not think that you're coming on to them. There's certain guys that are like this. It's like there's the two ends of the spectrum. There's the guy that you can't make eye contact and smile, or he will think you want to fuck him. And then there's the guy that you can come at him stark naked and straddle him, and he'll be like, I just don't know if she likes me. And you're like, oh my God, dude, what is wrong with you? So this dude is just, he thinks that everybody has chemistry with him. And Cornelia is married and has children, as we wind up finding out later, but he really thinks that there's like something there. And I kind of love that he gets thrown into the mix here, because we have everybody else who we know like where they felt they stood with Rebecca. But then having this one random who has no like discernible relationship with her that we have seen gets just added into things, and it does make it funnier. The one weak link for me, and I'd be interested to hear if you guys agree with me on this, is Nathaniel being as cut up about Rebecca leaving as he is. I feel that Nathaniel's like feelings for Rebecca feel a little bit too sudden, and it was something that I was willing to go with him just being like obsessed with her because of the fact that she wasn't really that interested. But now that it seems like he really is super into her, I don't really know how I feel about it. I liked it when it was like an ego thing, because that felt appropriate to what we know about Nathaniel. He is so self-centered and so like image focused that the idea that he would be just kind of like, he would be put into a frenzy by the idea of a woman that he considers probably lower status than him on the dating market, just straight up not being that interested. That really, really rings true to me. But we have him, I didn't realize at the end of the last episode, and we started with this episode, and I was suddenly like, oh, apparently he like slept at her house, slept in her bed, and then like tries to argue with the movers who show up to get her stuff. And that does not ring true to me. I really don't see the Nathaniel that we know getting the information that he does about what Rebecca did with burning this dude's house down and still continuing to feel exactly the same way about her. That is one of those things that like, it's not that it's like out of the question, but I haven't seen enough of him caring about her to buy that yet. So that I found kind of shocking. And so the rest of this episode being kind of about him trying to get over her, and Paula like sitting down with him and being like, are you okay? And him saying, no, but I will be. I was just like, I guess. That whole thing doesn't entirely work for me. It feels a little bit forced, and in some ways it robs Nathaniel of what I enjoyed about him, which was his over-the-top cold-heartedness. You know, I like there to be these moments of weakness with him, but I don't want him to be constantly like, I don't want him to turn into a suddenly sincere character, because it doesn't feel right to me. You know, that's a straight up personality change, and that's totally different. Megan says, this is way past when you asked the question, but I Googled thigh-high feminism, and the best I can find is Tucker Carlson told a teen Vogue writer named Lauren Duca she should stick to thigh-high boots and Ariana Grande instead of politics. She then called her article Thigh-High Politics. Okay, I can deal with that. So it's sort of like trying to like take back the like sexualization and femininity that can be mocked really easily, which I am 100% behind. You know, you guys all know that I'm very sex positive. I'm very pro sex worker. I'm very pro like hyper feminine. Anything that like used to get mocked, liking pink, liking things covered in glitter, anything like that has always been sort of on the table as something that's like so girly as to the point of being like gross. And I'm all about it. Y'all know I love me some shit that's so girly it's practically gross. Give it to me. So, all right, that works for me. So yeah, anyway, the whole thing with Nathaniel is the one real weak spot of this episode that just, it didn't really work for me. And having him be sort of the face of things with Cornelia, the person who's sort of guiding her through what's going on with everybody else, it made sense in a way, because the only other person that it would work for this role would be Paula. And Paula not going into work at all because she's so upset over what happened makes much more sense than her trying to pretend everything is fine and going into work and then playing this role. Which, you know what? Now that it's been brought up, I'm just going to go into talking about what's going on with Paula. When her husband goes into her bedroom, because she's just sitting up in bed and she's on her computer, and she's apparently looking through the photos from like the Facebook friendiversary thing, and crying over her friendship with Rebecca and how everything is over. And I don't know about y'all, but those friendiversary things are always so weird, because sometimes they'll do them for people that you don't even really have any photos with, and it's just like this odd like 2 photo montage, and then it's over and you're like, okay, thanks for nothing. But my friendiversary with Rashawn was on September 1st. And I don't know how I forget that every year, but we became Facebook friends on the day that the Hogwarts Express leaves the station to head for Hogwarts. And I think that is such a great little coincidence. We weren't covering Harry Potter when she and I became friends on Facebook, and yet it's just that coincides with our friendiversary. So her husband comes in and says, like, you know, we need to get your mind off of this. He calls in his sons and he has to like, we want to spend more time with you, very forcefully. And then her sons appear. Yeah, Mom. Yeah. Yeah, we want to spend more quality family time, Mom. Oh my God. There's only so much time before I go off to college. Who are we kidding? I'm not going to college. And eventually, he's forced to bring out the big guns and get the fancy fairy game out, which apparently she only ever plays with her sister and her sister's daughters. And what follows is this beautiful little scene. All of them are wearing these like tiaras that are elasticized and fairy wings. And they're playing the game, and her sons are getting genuinely invested in it and like playing it for realsies, which I just loved so much. Those kinds of things. Doing something for a person simply because you know they'll enjoy it, and letting yourself get into it and really like, that is something that's so underrated, I think, as a means of showing a person that you care about them, and is investing your time and energy. And I think that's just, a lot of people think it has to be these big gestures, or you need to like buy expensive gifts or things like that. And it just really, it doesn't have to be. It can just be taking the time to do something like this. And it's these sorts of moments that I think signify more how much you are willing to invest in a person. Erica says, this is the original actor who played Brendan again. In season 1, it was this guy. Then last season, it was a different kid with dark hair. I thought he looked different. Okay. He's around so infrequently that I like kind of just don't even notice, you know? He kind of reminds me of Ryder Strong a little bit. Like he's got kind of that vibe to him. Sort of this like surfer dude kind of look. So yeah, I loved that whole scene. I love her looking around at everybody and at her sons who were like fighting over the gumdrops. I'm going to the candy cotillion. All of this and her beginning to cry and saying, guys, this is really, really fun. Thank you. I found that really touching. It was one of those small moments that just resonated really well. And you don't get a lot of her with her family, and it just made it mean a lot. So eventually she decides that she's going to take a real vacation because the firm is working on this lawsuit regarding a timeshare, and they have a really nice pool area in the brochures, and she decides she's going to call until the end of the week, and she convinces her husband to do it too, and they all go down to this timeshare at the same time that Nathaniel is coming down there with Cornelia. And as it turns out, everybody else also goes, which I would love to know how that worked out work-wise, because that's almost the entire office. And I would have thought they'd have had to get their time off approved by Nathaniel. But here they are. So what's that about? And hijinks ensue there. So let's back up and let's talk about Rebecca. The episode begins with her sitting up in the fold-out couch in her mom's house. There's something about the fact that Rebecca doesn't even have a bedroom that I think is very revealing. This isn't it either. This is not the same house that she grew up in as a kid, or it is, and her mother has made some other use for her bedroom, and there is no bed in there, which feels to me more likely that her mother has the same house, but just got rid of Rebecca's stuff as soon as she left. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the feeling of being a nuisance to your own parents. I came back from my first year in college, and my parents had split up while I was away, and my mother had moved into a studio apartment in someone's basement, and my father had sold our house and moved into a one-bedroom. And the one bedroom was in the back of a church. It was sort of like the area that maybe the pastor was supposed to stay if he wasn't married. And there was a basement storage room. It was 2 storage rooms connected, one door to get in. And my dad cleared out the first one of the 2 that you had to walk through to get to the second one, and put my twin bed in there. So you had to walk out of his apartment into the church area and down the basement steps to get to my, quote, room. And I was not allowed to have my Harry Potter books or any of I had these pewter fairy statues that I collected from the Ren Fair. I wasn't allowed to have any of that stuff out because he thought the church would find it offensive. And they would see it because they regularly walked through my bedroom to get to their storage room. So my room was not private at all. And I was certainly not allowed to have any boys over. And reminder, at this point, I'm 19 years old. Or 18. And it was made really apparent that this was kind of a pain in the ass for my dad to set it up. Asking for them to give me this storage space was an awkward thing for him to do. And once I moved in, it took only about 2 weeks of me being there for him to complain about how much he was spending on groceries now that I lived with him. Which I had spent the entire previous summer living at a work-study for the Goodspeed Opera House and using my own income to buy my own groceries. So he had not spent anything on groceries for me for over a year. but nevertheless felt the need to comment on it and everything else that he ever had to supply when I moved back in. And I'm sure he didn't mean it the way it sounded to me. But it really made me feel like a huge burden. It made me feel like I had to justify being here, that he didn't really want me here, and that he felt like I was taking resources and not giving anything back, like I was a leech. And eventually, my aunt and uncle, who felt that I had a lot of potential and that this living situation was not capitalizing on that, they stepped in and they had an extra very large bedroom with an attached bath. And they said that I could move in there with them while I figured out what I wanted to do. And my father was clearly very relieved to have me off his hands. And again, I don't think he meant it the way that it felt, but it really felt like, thank God, I don't have to deal with her. And this Rebecca sitting in the living room in the fold-out sofa, rather than having her own childhood bedroom that she can go sleep in, like Josh's that we saw just last episode, it really emphasizes how much of a guest she is to her own mother. Her mother doesn't treat her like, this is my daughter who is more than welcome to come here. There's always a room for you. This is, oh God, I guess I'll pull out the couch. Let me find the sheets. I don't even know where what do I tell people? How long are you going to be here? What are you even doing? I knew what this was the moment that I saw her sitting in this fucking fold-out couch. And sure enough, her mother is attempting to sort of take the reins of her life, and Rebecca is putting up no fight because she is really feeling that her mother is right. She isn't capable of managing her life. And also, Rebecca's already contemplating taking her own life. So what her mother chooses to do doesn't even matter. She's not worried about it because she doesn't really plan on being around to deal with it. But we don't know that yet. So her mother offers to fax in her resignation and go ask for her old job back. Rebecca says, sure, go ahead. Her mother is very clearly a little bit taken aback at the fact that Rebecca isn't fighting her on this the way that she normally does. But she's really excited to get to manage Rebecca's life. So she's not asking too many questions. And then she comes downstairs and Rebecca's on her laptop. Rebecca says something about how she's working on her resume and her mom tries to grab the laptop to see and Rebecca won't let her see it. And later, her mom pulls the laptop out from her arms as she's sleeping and opens it up. And there's a website that she searched for the most painless ways to kill yourself. And her mom says, oh, Becky, no. And then we see her do this about face with her behavior, which is admittedly very suspicious to Rebecca. And she makes her this strawberry milkshake. First thing she does is go and wake Rebecca up after letting her sleep all day, which I do not believe she would have done otherwise. She's my father, again, to bring him up, was the kind of person that saw sleeping late as a cardinal sin. It was inexcusable to sleep till 9 a.m. That was just way too late. And if you slept past that, it was downright shameful. And he didn't know what you were even going to do with your life. And I experienced this myself. And then when he remarried and she had a teenage son and I saw him the way he dealt with him, it was the same thing. And the fact that she lets Rebecca sleep this long is one of the first major indulgences. So Rebecca wakes up and her mom has this strawberry milkshake. And Rebecca notes that it's the first time her mother's ever encouraged her to eat. Because her mother has a fucking eating disorder and body issues and has tried to throw that onto Rebecca many times. Rebecca, we get this montage of the two of them hanging out together and having a better time. And then we get the song, Maybe She's Not Such a Heinous Bitch After All. And it's one of those that's like, it's meant to be darkly funny because it's about Rebecca just wanting to resent her mother in a regular way, the way that most girls do, rather than in the intense way that she does. And yet it's just so sad. It can't help but be really sad. This girl didn't have a father in her life. So this was it. This was all she had. This isn't like somebody, like, for example, me. My father was really tough. But then I had a slightly overindulgent mother to sort of balance that out. And Rebecca didn't have that. She had my dad, and that was all. And that's really not great. It's just not fair, you know? It's just not fair. The way that we each get like these random hands in life, and some of us hit the parent jackpot, and others just wind up with this like, well, they kept me alive, I guess. Like, it just sucks. So we see this montage of her beginning to feel closer to her mom and thinking like, because she asks her mom finally, why are you being so nice to me? And her mom says, it's clear you need me and you need some TLC. And that should be enough if you are a normal parent with a normal relationship with your kid. But it's not enough here. Like, there's just... Eventually, Audra Levine turns up and she points this out to Rebecca. She's like, I know that you're smarter than this. She's up to something. And if you don't know what it is yet, that means it's working. And this leads to Rebecca searching through her mother's house. And I'll tell you what, I didn't think that there was any more going on here than just her mother dialing up the nice, maybe a little bit too much, in order to comfort her daughter. The idea of her drugging Rebecca did not occur to me. And so when you see Rebecca searching the house, I was genuinely like, what is it she's expecting to... Like, I couldn't figure it out. So when she comes across the pills, and they're bright pink, and then you see the milkshake, and you realize... It's tough. Like, first of all, I always have this, like, hang up with these sorts of storylines. I maintain there is no way somebody grinds up a pharmaceutical and puts it in food and you don't taste it. Maybe my sense of taste is too strong and it would just not work on me personally, and for other people it would be fine. But I just feel like that shit tastes really bitter a lot of the time, and I feel like that would come through and you'd be like, there's something wrong with this, you know? The only thing that we get is Rebecca saying, like, sometimes it makes my head buzz or my ears buzz. And that's the closest we get to a hint that there's anything amiss, you know? What I really am unwilling to look at, though, for me, is I know in principle that drugging somebody without their consent is wrong. But I just can't be that mad at Rebecca's mother. She found out that her daughter was contemplating suicide. Now, what a responsible parent with good communication skills should have done is sat down and actually talked to her. Admittedly, that's the way you should handle it. Discuss with her what she's going through. Being like, I really feel like, you know, there's like there's something different about this situation and you seem even more down than usual, do you want to talk to somebody? But Rebecca and her mom don't have that kind of relationship. Rebecca doesn't trust her mom to open up and be vulnerable and explain to her how she's feeling like this. Her mother just got through telling her, I need to take the reins of your life because clearly you're not capable. You can't say that kind of thing to your child and then expect them to confide in you. That's something that I think a lot of parents don't really understand. It's something that I see a lot. There were a couple groups that I was in where people would ask for advice with dealing with like tweens, and they would just say like, well, they would tell me if such and such was going on. But if you had seen their post, you would know that based on what they had said about their relationship with their kid, there is no way in hell that kid would have told them anything of the sort. Parents overestimate the closeness they have with their children and underestimate the willingness of even a very good, obedient child to lie. They just don't want to believe that they can be fooled because it gives them a sense of a loss of control. But kids don't tell the truth like a lot of the time. And if you raise them, letting them see that you have contempt for a lot of their choices, that you do not support their decisions, that you don't trust their judgment, there's no reason for them to tell you the truth about anything because they know what they're going to get. And why would they? So, if we acknowledge that Rebecca would not talk to her mother, which I don't think she would, this is one of the only other options. And it's not great, but I get it. I really, really do. And it's fucked up, and I don't think it's right, but I understand it. And in addition to that, the reaction that Rebecca has to her mother saying, I wanted you to calm down so that we could talk, and maybe you could go somewhere. And Rebecca says, commit me. And her mother says, that is such a dramatic word. Now, normally when somebody says that is such a dramatic word, or I hate that word, what they're doing is they're dodging the very stark reality of the thing they're saying. You know, like somebody's trying to talk about how, well, this dude was pressuring her to have sex and not taking no for an answer. And you're like, so he tried to rape her. And they're like, oh, I hate that word. But you're like, that's what it was, though. In this case, I don't think her mother was trying to say, I was going to forcibly commit you. I was going to put you in a place where you couldn't come out, or that you weren't like allowed to speak to anybody. There is to me, the implications of committing sounds like something that is involuntary, and there's a finality to it. It sounds permanent. It makes it sound like you aren't fit to be amongst the normies. You have to be put somewhere else. I don't think that's what her mom is saying. Her mother has money. She has the resources to get Rebecca in a place with people that will help. She is Rebecca's in a uniquely privileged position in this case, where a lot of people in her state wouldn't have anywhere to turn. They would have to try and make it work with a therapist, that if they were able to find one, on a sliding scale once a week, and try and struggle through the 6 days between appointments. Her mother has the resources to get her somewhere with daily intensive care, medications, counseling, and give her full 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, opportunities to recuperate and rest and heal. And Rebecca is behaving as if this is just an insult and that it's her mother trying to get rid of her. And she says, you made me think you loved me. And I hate that her mother doesn't argue with her in that instant. A moment later, she says, I do love you. I'm trying to help. But I wanted her to like talk back immediately. I wanted her to say, of course I love you. I wasn't trying to fool you. I do love you, and I'm trying to do something that's helpful to you. But they are not good at communicating with each other. And that's not like... It's just so frustrating as somebody who, you know, I don't even have health insurance, you know, I'm not, if this were my situation, I'm not in a position to be able to do anything. I would have to just try and find like some online like televisit services. It frustrates me so much to see Rebecca have this opportunity to do something really healthy and not do it and reject it in a way that makes it sound like she has been insulted and like it's been suggested that there's something like just broken about her and that she's being like shut away to never see the light of day again. Rowan says, does her mom have money? We've heard that she dropped out of law school to have Rebecca, and we've never heard what she does for a living since then, and we know her dad is a deadbeat. I assert absolutely. We see her mother getting cosmetic surgery a couple of times. She's going in for Botox. She's getting a lot of other stuff done. We see the exterior shot of her house, which looks like a very easily like a 3 or 4 bedroom in a nice neighborhood. And the whole look of the house on the inside reeks of money. This is somebody who is doing more than okay. 100%. And I have no doubt of it. The fact that she's able to like go in and out of, California at will. She can afford to fly down and she can like pay for Rebecca's stuff to get packed up and sent back. Money, I don't have any inkling that it's an issue of any kind for her mother. It just seems like they are doing just fine in that regard. And granted, we don't know what she does for a living, but it's just, you know, she's going on vacations and stuff. She's doing all kinds of things. She's living it up. So yeah, I definitely think that she, like, whether she dropped out of law school, I don't know if she went back or what, but I think since then she's managed. And even if she didn't have money, she's clearly offering to foot the bill for this, whatever this is, or try and figure it out. Even if she doesn't have money, we know that Rebecca's got money. Rebecca's doing okay. And it's just, you know, I have a friend who did a, like, you know, during the pandemic, needed something like this, but it wasn't a good time to go into like an inpatient facility. And so she had to do something like from home, and it kind of saved her. And it was the sort of thing that like she admitted how lucky she was to have even had that as an option, because so many people don't. And it's really just tough for me when somebody has resources and they have options and they are just not willing to make use of them. And that's part of the mental illness, right? That's like, they go hand in hand. Not wanting to accept help, not wanting to tell people how you are really feeling. For me, it's always been tied in with the feeling of being a burden. I have always felt like telling somebody how I'm really doing and being vulnerable and maybe like crying in front of them, I feel like I am too much and I don't want to put that on anybody else. So I keep shit to myself too much. And I think that's part of the deal with Rebecca is like, she doesn't want to be a burden. And also she is like clinging to this idea that she can figure it out on her own. Why do we value that so much? Like, why do we really think, unless I figure it out by myself, it's not worth anything? It's a really bizarre mindset that we have. And the idea that we have to figure it all out when there are going to be people in the world who have experienced something similar and have learned that we could talk to and find out basically some cheat codes from them, there's no shame in that. Figuring it out on your own doesn't always work out, man. That can, you know. So Rebecca winds up bailing from her mom's house. And she takes the pills with her. And she's on the plane heading back to LA. And one of the stewardesses, who has a very Luna Lovegood vibe to me. I don't know what it is about her, but the actress who plays Luna Lovegood in the movie is that woman who plays the flight attendant, really reminds me of her. But she asks Rebecca if everything is okay, because Rebecca's clearly just like staring straight ahead and just like in a state. And she offers to bring her a glass of Merlot. And Rebecca has these pills and she's looking at them, and it's clear that she can't decide what to do. And she finally suddenly decides, fuck it. It's like this, one of those like sudden momentary things of like, I know I'm going to lose my nerve if I wait any longer, so I'm just going to do it. And this is another, like, when I contemplated suicide years ago, I would never have done it in this way, because I don't want strangers dealing with my dead body and trying to figure out who to call, and, you know, them having to find me and figure out, like, I always thought that if I killed myself, I would not want to do it in a way that left anybody particularly traumatized. So I would not throw myself in front of a train, because that poor train conductor, that's something that never leaves you. I wouldn't want to just like maybe throw myself off a bridge with no note or anything, because then nobody knows what's happened to you. And they just like live wondering, maybe she's still out there. Maybe she just ran away. What happened to her? I would like probably do it somewhere off the beaten path, and then leave a note and be like, look, I did this. I can be found here. I would appreciate it if you got the paramedics to come and get me rather than coming yourself, so you don't have to see me. Because again, not wanting to be a burden, even in death, I wouldn't want to be like in a tub waiting to be found by Owen or something like that, you know? And so for me, the idea here of killing herself in a plane full of strangers with this poor flight attendant being the only one who can find her, I was just like, oh my God, Rebecca, this is really bleak. Like, this is just, you really have to have hit a bottom that I haven't to be willing to do this here. And in some ways, maybe this is less of a burden because it's not people that do know you. So there won't be an emotional sort of reaction in that way. But all I could think as she was taking those pills was like, oh my God, this girl is going to have to be the one to deal with this, is going to have to be the one to discover that this woman OD'd. And I didn't know how it was going to be handled. And finally, we have Rebecca looking up at the button that you press to get help from a flight attendant. And the button says help at first. And her vision is all blurry and sound isn't quite coming through. And then she looks up again and it says hope. And she presses the button. And the flight attendant comes over and she hands her the empty bottle and just says, I need help. And that's the end of the episode. And I thought that was a really good spot to end it. You just need to be able to say that you need help. And it's a hard thing. We just want to do it ourselves for some reason. It's one of those things that's like, we revere going it alone. to a degree that's honestly kind of like fetishistic. Going it alone doesn't make you stronger. Going it alone isn't an inherently strong thing. And that seems to be like just something that we believe as a culture, you know? The idea that anybody ever does anything alone is just kind of dishonest. Like, let's be real, you know? Even people will try and say that to me about like my podcast, like, you did this all by yourself. I didn't, though. First of all, I have a lot of really great co-hosts who committed their time every week. Secondly, I had a partner who was very supportive and allowed me to struggle through a period of making no money while they completely supported me. I absolutely did not do this all by myself. Sure, I created the content, I did the editing and all of that stuff, but trying to pretend that you got someplace without any help is you being incredibly disrespectful to the things that other people did to help you get there. And that's part of like my hang up about capitalism in general, is the idea of these people who are making millions or billions because they like made it, they succeeded. And it's like, no, nobody gets that to that place without exploiting people. You have to, in order to amass that kind of fortune. You are exploiting people and taking more than your fair share, or else you wouldn't be that far ahead of literally everybody else in the world. But we just love to act like, but they deserve to be there. They got there because of the investments that they made, the things that they invented or created. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't do that all alone. I'm sure that Jeff Bezos had somebody helping him write the code for his website, had somebody behind him helping, like, you know, even like it's been a meme going around recently that I believe when Walt Whitman wrote Walden, was it him that wrote Walden? He was getting his laundry done by his mom. You know, he writes about this whole like, oh, I'm self-sufficient and the beauty of like doing it for yourself. He wasn't, though. He was getting his laundry done for him by his mommy. But we never want to acknowledge the background players in things. And it's just so dishonest. Thoreau. Thank you, Rowan. It's just dishonest. It's just, it's a lie. It's a lie meant to prop up your ego. And it is damaging. It's disrespectful. And it's setting everyone else up for feelings of inadequacy because they can't understand why they can't seem to do it by themselves when nobody else has either. They've all just been lying about it. Anyway, I'm really interested to see what help looks like for Rebecca, because she's on her way to LA. So it would be great if we got to see her paired up with the therapist that she had been working with. But I don't know if that's what's going to happen here, because I don't really know how you are handled if you find yourself hospitalized due to a suicide attempt. I don't know what that looks like. Like, you know, she is going to have to get her stomach pumped. I don't know what kind of, you know, if the flight attendants are able to do something like that for her, or if they have to make an emergency landing and find somebody to help. How much time does she have before something goes wrong? And then when she's hospitalized and it's acknowledged that this was a suicide attempt, is she assigned a doctor? Is she sent somewhere? Is she like, will they contact whoever's like in her emergency contacts on her phone and her mother shows up and she's stuck with her mom again? I just don't know. Is Paula in her emergency contacts still? Because if so, then maybe Paula would show up, and that would certainly be better than fucking Naomi. I just don't know what the next episode looks like at all. And I can't imagine what poor Paula's going to do when she finds out. I mean, it's going to be really ugly. And and the whole thing with like Josh and him, this is such a quintessential part of the like crazy ex-girlfriend trope. He broke up with her and then she tried to kill herself. And people always say it in this way that's really mocking, as if it was like, oh, nobody thought she was serious about it. It's always treated in this way, like it's a bit of a joke, right? Oh, okay. And it's like, well, even if she wasn't serious about it, in quotes, she was obviously in a very bad place. And whether your assessment of that is accurate, that's self-evident. So I don't know what you think you're saying. It's just really interesting to be on the inside of one of those stories. That's the point of the show, right? And I think it's very brave of them to go here with this. It was sort of an inevitability. So it's funny that I just didn't see it coming. But it had to happen this way. We had to see Rebecca at this absolute low point. And we said rock bottom was her sleeping with Greg's dad, but like clearly not. And oh God, I'm worried about her, man. I wonder how the next episode's going to shake out. I just don't know. But it's not a voyeur, so I get to watch that one right away. So I'm pretty excited about it. All right, I'm going to wrap up. But thank you again very much to Megan for commissioning this. Thank you again to Julia for commissioning the live watch. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the coverage so far. And I will be seeing you again pretty soon, I think, with the next episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.